Shalom. I want to start out by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rakakwadash. Yahweh is the true, holy, and powerful name of the Heavenly Father. Bahashem meaning in the name. Yahweh Shai is the true, holy, and powerful name of his only begotten Son, who is the Savior of the nation of Israel. Starting off with the elect within the nation of Israel, and Israel consists of you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, as well as your Israelite foreigners scattered abroad that may look like the nations where you've been scattered to, but are Israelites. And I also want to give double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, pushing out this word in all sincerity and in truth. All right, this is the brother you call from the GMS branch out in Des Moines, Iowa, coming back at you with another lesson inspired by the Holy Spirit, Habakkuk Wadash. And Lord's will, I may entitle this lesson, Cry from the Fish Gate. All right, the first point of impact before full judgment. All right, Cry from the Fish Gate, the first point of impact before full judgment. And that title comes from the precept in the book of Zephaniah. All right, 1, all right, and 10 through 12, which we're going to grab as well. And also with, something that I had typed in the chat GPT, and how they said that the economic, the hit of the economy was one of the first impacts before the Lord brought in, more devastating judgment. And we saw that happen when the Lord was bringing in plagues upon Egypt. All right, the Lord systematically broke down their economy and then brought in more severe punishment. But the collapse of the economy was like the first blow, okay, before the Lord brought in even more, heavy punishments, man. So I wanted to jump into the chat, play a few of the points from a few talking heads, all right, about the global economy and how, the impending collapse is very near. Okay, and Lord's will is edifying. All right, so let's jump into it. This is the book of Zephaniah 1 and 10. It says, "And this shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord, that there shall be the noise of a cry from the fish gate, and then howling from the second, and a great crashing from the hills," right? And the fish gate ties right into the economy, which we're going to show that in the chat GPT. "Howl ye inhabitants of Maktesh, for all the merchant people are cut down." All right, so the trading, right? It says, "All they that bear silver are cut off. And it shall come to pass at that time that I will search Jerusalem with candles and punish the men that are settled on their lees." All right, in the NLT, it says to punish those who sit complacent in their sins. All right, so a lot of these leaders have been complacent. A lot of these leaders have not been warning. All right, because when we go into this word settled, you have different leaders, they were saying that it ain't gonna be no Jacob's trouble. All right, they haven't been warning about the economic collapse, which is going to lead into the market of beasts, that microchip being implemented, are spoken about in the book of Revelation 13 and 16. All right, for them to implement that market of beasts, they're going to have to collapse the global economy, all right, to lead into a new system. And this is what we've been warning about. But once again, these different leaders, these heads have not been warning. They've been settled on their lees, right? So this word settled, it says, to congeal, all right, which means that it's pretty much is not moving, okay? But let me go a little bit further into it. To contract oneself, to draw oneself together, to draw up the feet, all right? So relax, all right, to draw up the feet, okay? To sit with the feet drawn up, all right? So you're comfortable, okay? You relax, you're fine, right? That's why you have different leaders talking about, oh, the Lord could come 1,000 years from now or 30 years from now, right? They're complacent, they're settled. All right, they're not on their watch now. They're not blowing the trumpet, man. All right, so we looked up that word settled, and let's look up lees real quick. It says lees, dregs, okay. It's compared to what? Something preserved, i.e. settling of wine, the dregs. So, those dregs that sit at the bottom, of the wine. So it's showing you what a sense of what relaxed, settled, not moving, not warning. The scriptures talk about in the book of Isaiah, all right, the dogs that cannot bark, meaning that they're not warning. All right, they're settled. Okay, they're making money. They're talking about, we're going to, get land here in America and do this and that and the third. Well, judgment is going to come upon them. The scriptures talk about judgment will begin at my house. So these, different leaders, these different individuals that know that they Israelites and they haven't been sounding the alarm, blowing the trumpet, teaching false doctrine, they're about to get punished in these calamities, man. Okay. They're not finna be okay through the economic collapse, all right? Through the pestilence, through the pain, through the judgments to come. The Lord is going to allow them. He's going to bring judgment upon them in the midst of these different plagues, man. But anyways, it says, "And it shall come to pass that at that time that I will search Jerusalem with candles and punish the men that are settled on their lees, that say in their heart, the Lord will not do good, neither will he do evil, right? So they've been moving in the mentality as if the Lord isn't going to bring in this judgment, all right? They've been comfortable here. They haven't been warning the people. So in the midst of all of this, they're going to get punished, man. But that's not the main point of the lesson. You know, I want to go into this economic collapse, right? So I had typed in, how is the Fishgate associated with the economy in the chat GPT? So we're going to get the points out of this. You know, I don't want to prolong it. So number 2, it says it represented economic activity. Because goods flowed through it, the Fishgate became tied to supply chains, incoming goods, commerce, and trade, daily provision for the city. In an ancient city, gates weren't just defensive, they were economic arteries. If a gate like this was busy, the economy was active. Now we're going to keep that term that they use there, economic arteries, in our mind, all right, because we're going to come back to this same point a little bit later. It says why it matters in Zephaniah. In book of Zephaniah 1-10, when a cry comes from the fish gate, it signals more than just military trouble. Trade is disrupted. Markets are thrown into chaos. Economic stability is collapsing. And this is what we're warning we're on the brink of, an economic collapse. All right. You know, these gas prices are going up. Oil, all right, per barrel is going up. That doesn't just affect you driving to work and coming back. No, that affects all the trucking industry, right? You know, various other industries, man. The agriculture industry is being greatly affected. Okay, because 35%, I believe it's 35% of the fertilizer, all right, you know, for growing the crops and everything like that comes out of the Strait of Hormuz, which is shut down right now, man. All right. So this has very heavy economic is going to have an economic backlash, for lack of a better way to say it. All right. This is what they're projecting, but we know this is going to happen regardless, according to prophecy, man. Okay. So it says, so the prophecy is saying judgment isn't just spiritual. It will hit daily life, commerce, and survival, right? So this is going to affect your daily life, commerce, that's trade, right? And survival. Okay. It says deeper meaning, economy as a false security. There's also a deeper layer in the prophets. People often trusted in wealth, trade networks, prosperity. But the cry at the fish gate shows that what people depend on economically can fail suddenly. Now, the scriptures talk about in the book of 2nd Ezra, the 6th chapter, suddenly shall the full storehouses be found empty. So these things are going to catch people off guard on a sudden. Okay. They can collapse the economy on a sudden. Okay. You can suddenly be able to get, you know, swipe your card, get money out of your bank account. And then the next day on a sudden, you can't do that anymore. All right. Blackouts, you know, or hyperinflation on a sudden, you know, you was able to get gas yesterday, but then it didn't jump $2-3. All right. On a sudden, now you can't get gas or the food that you were expecting. You was going to go grocery shopping, you know. All right. I'm gonna go grocery shopping on Friday. That's when my check hit, you know, get a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But all of a sudden inflation hits. OK. And then on a sudden, you can't afford those same groceries that you thought you were going to be able to get. All right. So these things are going to be happening like that. All right. So what people depend on economically can fail suddenly. Modern day parallel. If you translate this today, the fish gate would be like major ports, stock markets, supply chain hubs, import export systems. When those are disrupted, prices rise. Goods become scarce. Society feels it immediately. All right. So the fish gate symbolizes the fragility of economic systems and how quickly they can be shaken. Right. It says, bottom line, the fish gate is associated with the economy because it was a main entry point for goods, a center of trade and commerce, a symbol of economic life and stability. All right. And in Zephaniah, it distresses how when judgment comes, it often hits the economy first, because that's what people rely on most, right? And we see this happen, you know, we saw this happen with ancient Egypt. Those different plagues that the Lord was bringing was strategically to smack the economy first, all right? And then the Lord poured in more devastating judgment. So I'm going to jump up, all right, and grab this point as well. And then we're going to grab another precept, all right? So initially what I had asked, what is the significance of the fish gate mentioned in Zephaniah 1-10, and how could that apply today? Now I'm gonna get to the point here as well. Number 2, the prophetic meaning in context. Book of Zephaniah 1 is describing the coming day of the Lord, a time of judgment. The fish gate represents the beginning of judgment, a breach in what should have been protected, the collapse of normal life, trade, economy, security. It's essentially the first point of impact where troubles start and spreads inward, right? So once again, it's honing in on this was really just the first point of impact, okay? You know, the scriptures got me thinking about the beginning of sorrows, you know, and so on and so forth, right? So as people are feeling, you know, it in the pockets when you go to the store and so on and so forth, the Lord is just getting started, man, with his judgment, because there's way more to come. It's going to be way more devastating, all right, in the days to come, man. It says spiritually / symbolic application. If you apply this today, the fish gate can represent, let me jump down, all right, to number C, or letter C. It says early warning signs of collapse. The cry at the fish gate is like the first alarm, the initial disturbance before full judgment. So this is what's going to really affect every single individual. All right. Everybody, you know, you have certain judgments that happen and, you know, it's been those scourges for amendment. All right. You know, where, you know, it may affect, you know, a group here, a group there, or, you know, a devastating storm can come in and affects those people in this area. Well, this is going to affect every single citizen in America, man. All right. Everybody is going to be affected by the economic collapse that's impending, man. All right. And once again, it's the Lord just getting started. All right. It says the initial disturbance before full judgment applied today. It says small moral compromises, cultural decline, spiritual apathy. Right. And, let's see. These are fish gate moments, early warnings before deeper consequences, right? Now I'm going to jump down. All right, to this point, it says, so the fish gate being the place where the cry begins highlights a key truth. Judgment often begins where vigilance has been lost. All right, there was another point I wanted to grab. Hold on. Let me see. Did I skip over it? All right, that's pretty much it. You know, the initial disturbance before full judgment. So that ties into the title, Cry from the Fish Gate, the first point of impact before full judgment. All right. So once again, I've been highlighting the point, or making mention of the point, how the Lord was doing this to ancient Egypt. Right. So let's read this first and then go into the chat on that. And then we're going to play a few clips. 2 Ezra 15 and verse 2 Ezra 15 and 10. It says, behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt. Right. And we're dwelling in spiritual Egypt. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 11 and verse 8. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. Right. So this place, America, is spiritually Sodom and Egypt. We know why this place is spiritually Sodom, are because of all the abominations that they're doing here, that they were doing in ancient Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighboring cities, when the Lord brought the fire and brimstone here, fire and brimstone there, which he's going to destroy this place through what? Fire and brimstone, the nuclear destruction, man. All right. And Egypt, what was in ancient Egypt? All right. Well, you had the northern and the southern kingdom that were there being going under oppression. Right. And here we're being oppressed together as well. All right. Just like in ancient Egypt. And there's so many different spiritual, connections that you could make with ancient Egypt and here today, man. You even got a pyramid on the dollar. Right. So there's a lot of different connections that we can make that this place is spiritual Egypt. It says where also our Lord was crucified. So our Lord wasn't crucified in ancient Egypt, nor in ancient Sodom and Gomorrah. Right. And he wasn't crucified here in Babylon physically. But what is talking spiritually, man? All right. He was spiritually crucified here. They crossed out his image. Right. They put up an image of a so-called white man, as if that was the Messiah, the Savior. All right. They had the people thinking that the Lord is all soft and he just loves everything, right? To where there's no fear of the Lord, man. All right. No fear of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, but the Lord is going to bring in the fear. He's going to make these people fear. All right. But just showing you that this place is spiritual Sodom and Egypt, right? So when we go back to this in the book of 2 Ezra 15 and verse 10, behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt, but I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm and smite Egypt with plagues as before. So the Lord is going to smite this place with plagues like he smote ancient Egypt with plagues, man. It says, and we're going to tie in the comparison of ancient Egypt and those plagues, how it affected ancient Egypt with how it can be tied into modern day Egypt. Here it says, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof. Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that the Most High shall bring upon it. They that till the ground shall mourn, for their seed shall fail through the blasting and hail, and with a fearful constellation. All right. So what? That ties into your agriculture. All right. Your farmers, they that till the ground shall mourn. Okay. It says, for their seed shall fail through the blasting and hail, and with a fearful constellation, man. All right. So agriculture is going to be heavily affected. All right. Within these plagues, man, just like the Lord did with ancient Egypt, right? Which is going to affect what the food supply, right? So let's type it in, or I had typed it in the chat GPT. So I had typed in, comparing the plagues of Egypt to today's time. Did the Lord collapse Egypt's economy before bringing in more severe judgments? That's a very perceptive question. And yes, if you read the plagues in sequence, there's a clear pattern where Egypt's economy is progressively dismantled before the most severe judgments fall. The account in book of Exodus, chapter 7 through 12, shows a deliberate escalation. It's not random destruction, it's systematic. All right, so the Lord is systematically, all right, breaking down the economy, all right, before he brings in more severe punishments upon this place, man. Number one, economic disruption comes early, all right. Several of the first plagues directly attack Egypt's, don't know what that is, all right. I think that's, okay, so they must have had an error there in the chat. All right, but anyways, it says several of the first plagues directly attack Egypt's economic, I'm gonna just say that was probably supposed to be like translated to economic backbone. All right, it says Nile turned to blood, Exodus 7. Okay, the Nile was Egypt's primary economic lifeline: water, transportation, fishing, and agriculture. So keep in mind the transportation. We're gonna hone in on this. All right, because of the Strait of Hormuz being closed. All right, which is a major port for all the transportation of oil. All right, which is needed for gas and so on and other things as well. All right, that's going to affect all the transportation, right? It says fishing and agriculture, and we're going to hone in on the agriculture as well. When it struck, the entire system destabilized. So this is what they're projecting, that the oil price is going up. What's happening in the Strait of Hormuz is destabilizing the entire system, right? So let's play this video. Now, this is from Snyder Reports. All right, the title of the video, it says diesel prices just hit a breaking point. What comes after? So let's play some of this. Fair use, fair use. All right, I don't have any, I don't own the copyrights to this video. I'm not making any money off of it. This is just for edification, so fair use. All right. So let's go ahead and play. Good.
Diesel has just hit over $5 per gallon. That means truckers are now considering parking their trucks, meaning
right now, let's bring up this definition before I go further. All right, because now they say that the trucking industry, I had typed this in, is the trucking industry referred to as the arteries of America, right? So we read previously in the chat GPT where it talked about the arteries. I think it said, use the word arteries or the lifeline. All right, when we went into the fish gate, tying into that, right? But the Nile was like the backbone or the arteries of the Egyptian economy, right? So tying it into this point, yes, the trucking industry is frequently referred to as the backbone or essential lifeline of the American economy, often likened to the arteries because it moves over 72% of the nation's freight and connects 80% of U.S. communities to goods. Key reasons for the analogy: vital transport. Trucks move over 72% of all domestic tonnage, transporting over 10 billion tons of freight annually per American Trucking Associations. So this is why when they were having those that trade war when Trump first came into office, and they were having the war with China, and they were talking about they were talking about the trucking strike and everything like that. A lot of people were in fear because they were like, look, if the trucking industry stops, that's like, the lifeline of America. There's going to be a heart attack. All right. You stop the arteries from being able to circulate blood. That's a heart attack, man. So there was a lot of fear of that even back then. So with the prices skyrocketing, because this is going to affect all industries, all right, because things have to get from one place to another, and you need gas for that. You need oil. They need the diesel to fuel the machines, all right, the trucks and everything like that, okay? To get them from one place to another, that's going to skyrocket the prices of everything else on top of the dollar collapsing in value, okay? You know, on top of all these other things, that's why they're saying that this is going to be an unprecedented collapse, man, all right? They haven't seen anything like this before, man. How everything is going to be affected by it. So it says economic impact. The industry employs millions of people and is crucial for maintaining the supply chain as described on this website. Community dependency. 80% of U.S. communities rely solely on trucking for their goods, according to this article. While backbone is a very common term, the sentiment of being the vital life-sustaining systems align with the metaphor of being America's arteries, right? You know? So going back to this in the chat GPT, Nile turned to blood. The Nile was Egypt's primary economic lifeline. So a part of the economic lifeline here in America is the trucking industry, man. Water, transportation. There goes the transportation right there. Fishing, agriculture. When it struck, the entire system is destabilized.
This isn't good.
So going
Diesel
back to the
has
video,
just hit over $5 per gallon. That means truckers are now considering parking their trucks, meaning deliveries do not get delivered. We're also hearing about companies talking about, and we've heard of this before and also seen it, FedEx did this once, where they are considering a fuel surcharge for every single delivery. And I'm going to talk about this because this is going to impact every single one of us immediately. According to multiple experts,
so if the prices are going up and let's say they implement a fuel surcharge, all right, they're going to pass off those surcharges to the people, okay? If Walmart has to pay an extra, I'm going to just throw out a number, an extra $100 per truck that's coming in for the gas, all right, for all because of the gas that they need to bring in the goods, that means they finna charge you more for it. All right, that's going to hit the consumer's
stating that when
pockets
diesel
directly,
prices
man.
rise in the first 1 to 2 weeks, all we see is just the prices rise. That's it. Diesel more expensive. But over the next couple of weeks, so actually week 3 to about 6, this is when, once we start to see diesel prices really increase, that's when we see increases to food. That's when we see price increases to lumber. That's where pharmaceuticals become more expensive. That's the issue. So this is going to impact your wallet very soon, likely within the next 10 days. Look at this. It says what $5 diesel means for the U.S. economy. I want to touch on this a little bit, okay? Because this is where we're at. Currently, as of today, March 18th, gas prices as a national average are $3.84. I want to show you something. This is today. This is what gas was yesterday, $3.79. A week ago, $3.57. A month ago, $2.92. Here's diesel, okay? Today, $5.06. Yesterday, $5.04. A week ago, $4.83. And a month ago, and even a year ago, $3.67. Okay, $3.67 to $5.06. That's a huge issue. What is that? Almost $1.40, $1.39. $1.39 increase in 1 month. Okay, that's like a 40%. That's a massive increase. Okay, so a lot of people are saying, well, it doesn't really affect me.
Right, and that's been the attitude of a lot of people, man. Prices going up, no big deal. All right, it's gonna be felt, man. It's gonna be felt.
It will affect you.
He's gonna go into it.
Now, I want to read a couple things to you. First off, let's look at this. It says, driving the news, the average retail price of a gallon of diesel was $5.04 on Tuesday. AAA says it's up from $3.65 a month ago. That's a 38% 1 month rise in the price of fuel. The problem that we're facing, okay, is that, and I'm going to read it to you, people are not ready for this. Look at this. It says between the lines. That isn't likely to result in immediate price increases, but will shape the pricing decisions companies make in the weeks ahead, especially for heavy, bulky, and inexpensive goods for which transportation is a large share of their total cost. For instance, food. Okay, let's just break it down. What does the average person spend money on? Food. We buy a lot of food. Well, guess what? 70% of goods here in the United States are transported by truck. Diesel is the leading driver of this. Okay, consider food supply, Amazon deliveries, right? Construction material. We are using diesel trucks in order to get this from one place to the other. I want to read this to you. Okay, here's what we are hearing from experts. Independent truckers are currently operating at a loss because diesel prices went up so quickly. Okay, 38% in the matter of a month. That right there did not give these independent truckers time to renegotiate their contracts, okay, to change how much they're getting paid. As a result, they're losing money. So guess what? It would make more sense for that trucking company, that independent trucker, to just say, you know what? I can't deliver your load. Sorry, I'm going to actually have to not do that. My truck's parked for today, because people are putting some of their expenses on credit cards. Truckers are losing money as we speak because they can't afford the rapid rise in diesel prices. As a result, this is what we're going to have happen. If trucks are parked, there's going to be fewer deliveries. You're going to see exactly what we saw in 2021 and 2022, where we saw supply chain disruptions. That's what's going to happen today. Shipments will be delayed. There's going to be rising freight costs. Okay? Expect that. If diesel prices do not come down rapidly, we are going to expect a massive, massive hit, because people will not be delivering their loads. I want to read something to actually play something.
Right, so that's all I'm gonna play on that, but you see that, the major implications of what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz, man. All right, but this is all a part of the judgment of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, the Lord sending plagues upon Egypt as before. He began to break down their economy, and the Lord is beginning to really make this economy, or really begin to break it down, man, and cause these people to really feel it. Everybody, man. All right, so let's go back to this, and then we're gonna play a few other videos as well. All right, so moving further, frogs, gnats, and flies, all right? Exodus 8, these create widespread contamination and disorder affecting homes, food, storage, and daily productivity. Livestock struck, Exodus 9, 1-7. This is a major economic blow. Livestock meant food, labor, trade, and wealth. Losing them, it hits agriculture and commerce hard, all right? Agriculture collapse follows. Hail destroys crops and trees. Locusts consume whatever remains. All right, so the transportation is being hit. All right, the agriculture is being affected, and it's going to lead into what? Famine. Okay, on top of the collapse of the economy, and all these other things, man. It's all going to tie into bringing in a famine that's going to hit this place, man. All right, let's play this video as well. Because people, they're really just kind of thinking about the gas. All right, but, well, we'll just play it. Let me see. I think it's, which country is it? Colonel McGregor. Now, I had used this clip in a previous lesson, but I want to use it again just to pull a point out of it. Let's go back.
The evidence that it's going to be.
No.
All right, so this video is Colonel Doug McGregor, Iran war not ending anytime soon.
The first thing we need to keep in mind is that roughly 25% of the world's oil is now offline. That's a quarter of the world's oil supply. Now, that is offline not for a few days or for a few weeks. In some cases, it's indefinite. So that's the first thing. 35% of the world's fertilizer is now no longer being shipped. And that
So 35% of the world's fertilizer is not being shipped. Okay. Well, you need that fertilizer to grow your crops. All right. So this is going to have a major impact on farmers. Right. This is a part of the fearful constellation, man, that we read about in that second Ezra, the 15th chapter. All right. Those that till the ground shall have a fearful constellation, because they're looking out. When people used to look at the constellations, that was supposed to, I forget the term that they had for it, but at one point, people would really, look at the stars, the constellations, to determine what type of season they would have. If it would be a rainy season, or if it was you were going to have good crops this year, the next spring, and so on and so forth. I think it's called a farmer's almanac. That's the word I was looking for, the phrase, a farmer's almanac, right? So them having a fearful constellation, that's them looking ahead, and they're seeing that it's not going to be good, all right, for various different reasons, man. All right, the economy is trash. They can't get their fertilizer. The prices of all these things is going up. The fuel that they need to use, all right, for their farming equipment, those big machines, that's going up. Unaffordable, man. All those tying to
is a vital aspect of our life. It's indefinite. Right. So that's the first thing. 35% of the world's fertilizer is now no longer being shipped. And that too is a vital aspect of our lives that we don't pay a great deal of attention to. Natural gas fuels over 40% of U.S. power. Higher gas prices lead to immediate utility bill increases for consumers. So what's this mean? U.S. manufacturers of fertilizers and chemicals face higher feedstock costs. Eventually, we're going to see the price of food and consumer goods rise dramatically. And what about monetary policy? Persistent energy-driven inflation could prevent the Federal Reserve from cutting any interest rates as they the United States, Canada. China
Right,
is
so
now
I'm gonna
forced to
skip a
buy
little
more
bit ahead
expensive,
in this.
transparently traded oil from the global market, rapidly depleting its cheap reserves. I guess what I'm trying to get across is we are not feeling the profound impact as quickly as the rest of the world, but it's going to catch up with us. It's going to catch up with us in a big
you
way.
mentioned
Yep. And once again, everybody is going to catch up. All right. It's going to catch up. And once again, the prophets say, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, have been warning you that all these things is going to catch up. Judgment will always catch up, man. Okay. You know, you can continue on it. Like it says in Ecclesiastes 8 and 11, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily. Therefore, are the hearts of the sons of men fully setting them to do evil, man. All right. You know, so people have a mind frame like, oh, I can continue to live however you want, you know, however I want, and so on and so forth. Let me bring in one precept just on that point, you know. But judgment always catches up. These words that the elders and apostles, you know, the prophecies, they always catch up. All right. Always, man. Okay. So this is the book of Ecclesiastes 8 and 11. I'm sorry. I quoted that one. I want to grab Ecclesiastes 11. All right. Ecclesiastes 11 and verse 9. Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth, and walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. But know thou that for all these things the Most High will bring thee into judgment. So this is a part of the judgment that the Lord is going to lead people in to suffer. Okay? While the Lord is going to cover his servants, all right, you know, his true believers in the midst of all these evils. Just like in ancient Egypt, what did the Lord do for his people? While the Lord was bringing plagues upon Egypt, he separated his people in the land of Goshen. All right? So they didn't have to suffer through those plagues, through those evils, man. All right. But now what the Lord is going to do, he's bringing plagues upon Egypt as before, but he's not going to separate all of Israel. All right. What he's going to do is he's going to separate the believers. All right. You know, allow them to be covered in the midst of these different judgments, man. Okay. Protect them and provide for them and allow them to eat in the midst of the famine. You know, allow them and their households to be covered as these judgments are being poured out, man. All right. But it says, once again, rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth, and walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. But know thou that for all these things the Most High will bring thee into judgment. So judgment is at the door, you know. Judgment is clearly at the door. All right, so I want to grab one more, just speaking on the agriculture standpoint. All right, I'm going to grab this this video here. Okay, and I use this one as well. And the lesson the Spirit had me do, I think it was entitled like avalanche, something with the word avalanche. The avalanche is coming or something along those lines. All right. But let's start at, is this the minute mark?
Already coming to something that starts to smell like the 1970s, except this disruption in absolute terms is.
So this is from the Mario Nawfal. There will be shortages of everything.
Much worse
Alex
than the
Craner
oil
on
embargo of the
economics of Iran
1970,
war.
whenever it was, 72, 73, 74. And so we're going to have stalled, whole segments of the economy stalled. Even in agriculture, our agriculture depends very heavily not only on farm machinery using diesel fuel, but also artificial fertilizers. Artificial fertilizers, the main feedstock is natural gas. Qatar was exporting about 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas. So that's a hugely important feedstock. And so that's going to come to it. So, and that, you know, there's problems with the exports of helium, it's going to affect the chip production, it's going to affect all kinds of, you know, there's going to be massive cascading events. So this is the, you know, this.
So as he mentioned, there's going to be massive cascading events, all right, that they're projecting because of this. Even if they were to open up the Strait of Hormuz right now, today, you know, these things would still hit, all right, you know, it'd still be a great, you know, economic fallout, all right, because of these different things, man. This ain't no switch that you could just turn on. Oh, okay, you know, they opened up the strait and now everything's fine. Like, nah, this made a big stall in the global economy, man. All right. To where it'll take months. You know, they've been projecting it'll take like 6 months to a year just to recover back. All right. You know, to get things somewhat back to normal and prices
kind
somewhat
of the
back to
proverbial
normal.
Avalanche. And we're just watching it happen and not moving because, do you know why? Because we tend to react to risk only if we have a recent experience of it, and if it has produced an emotional reaction. That's just how we are hardwired. Even when we're rationally aware of a risk, we tend to not react. Like this family, they were looking at it, but they never got swamped by an avalanche. So they didn't move until it started to hit the dread levels. And so I think we're in a lot of trouble. We're going to be facing shortages of all kinds of everything, including eventually food, and rationing and hyperinflation. That's what's coming down. And I think that,
So like you said, man, hyperinflation, rationing,
all kinds of everything,
right?
including eventually food, and rationing and hyperinflation.
Yep. So food shortages, rationing, and hyperinflation, man. All right, which the Bible prophesies of all these things overwhelming America, Babylon the Great, man. Okay. So let's go back. All right, to the Chat GPT. So I'm gonna read this number 1 through again. It says the economic disruption comes early. Several of the first plagues directly attack Egypt's economic backbone. All right. So the Nile turned to blood. The Nile was Egypt's primary economic lifeline. So that's being hit. All right. America's primary economic lifeline through what? The trucking industry. All right. Which is described as what? The arteries, the backbone of America. And then on top of that, the dollar. All right. They're moving to trading with the yuan. That's what Iran, one of the stipulations to be able to trade in to travel through the Strait of Hormuz. They put it out there that, yeah, if you want to travel through the Strait of Hormuz and, continue on trade, then what do you have to do? You got to trade in the yuan. All right. No more US dollar. All right. So they're separating that, and that's going to, crazy work. All right. So it says frogs, gnats, flies. These created widespread contamination and disorder affecting homes, food, storage, and daily productivity. It says livestock struck. This is a major economic blow. Livestock meant food, labor, trade, and wealth. Losing them hits agriculture and commerce hard. Number 2, agricultural collapse follows. Hail destroys crops and trees. Locusts consume whatever remains. At this point, Egypt's food supply is essentially wiped out. Okay? Essentially wiped out. This is not just inconvenience. It's national economic ruin. This is coming to America, Babylon the Great, swiftly. Number 3, social and functional shutdown. Darkness. Exodus 10:21 through 29. This halts normal life entirely. Work, travel, governance. It's like a total system shutdown. Number 4, final judgment after total weakening. All right. See, by the time that Yahawashi comes, this place would have already been through, done with, finito. All right. Death of the firstborn, Exodus 11 through 12. This is the most severe judgment. And it comes after Egypt is already economically and socially devastated, man. All right, because the Lord is going to cap this place, put the cherry on top, all right, of this place, man, with the nuclear destruction, man. All right, finish America off, man. Okay, so let's grab this just on that point in the book of Wisdom of Solomon. All right, this is the book of Wisdom of Solomon. Is that 17? Or is it 19? Word, throne. All right, this is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 18, and verse 14. It says, for while all things were in quiet silence, and that night was in the midst of her swift course, thine almighty word. So this is speaking about Yahawashi, all right, who killed all the firstborn in Egypt. This is talking about him entering into the land of Egypt, all right, and bringing in that judgment, right? Says thine almighty word leap down from heaven out of thy royal throne. So this is what the Lord is going to do. He's going to leap off the throne, come with the thousands of angels, right? It says, as a fierce man of war into the midst of a land of destruction, all right? And brought thine unfeigned commandment as a sharp sword, and standing up filled all things with death, and it touched the heaven, but it stood upon the earth. So Yahawashi, he's going to be the icing on the cake, man. All right? The Spirit of the Lord is going to be in those nuclear missiles, guiding them to their destination here in America, Babylon the Great, destroying this place, man, making it desolate. All right. Yahawashi is going to be here, man, sending his angels to gather his elect to go up into that massive chariot. He's going to destroy all those armies in the valley of Jehoshaphat as they're fighting against one another. And then they're going to turn and fight him. He's going to destroy their ass, annihilate them. This is what's coming down the pike. So the Lord is just getting started, man. The Lord is just getting started on America, Babylon the Great, and these plagues that's getting sent throughout the world, man. You know, beautiful times that we're in. Beautiful, beautiful times. So let's end it off with this. All right. In the book of Peter. All right. The end is manifest, man. Second Ezra, the 9th chapter, like it says, man. But this is the book of 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 7. But the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. All right. So we're at the end of this thing, man. Beautiful times. Beautiful times. So I'm going to end it right there through the Spirit. Lord's will, I was edifying. I'm going to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, pushing out this word in all sincerity and in truth. With that, I'm going to say shalom.